Okay, are we still waiting for anybody else? No? Or we can start? Okay, so some people are disappeared. Maybe topic looks too scary. Hi everybody, again. My name is Anton. I am front-end developer. I have been doing front-end development for like 3 years now, and half of this time I'm doing it here in DxTechTalk. How many developers actually are here? Can you raise your hands, please? Okay, not good. Enough developers for me, I think. And front-end developers? Huh? Front-end. Okay. First of all, I should say that my English is far from perfect. I may mix up some words or tenses, but actually I speak JavaScript way better than English. Or it would be more proper to say that I speak TypeScript much better than English, because we write our front-end applications here in the DxTechTalk in TypeScript, mostly, but that's another story. All the examples in this talk will be in TypeScript, and this is going to be a pretty technical talk. But don't worry, the basic idea of static typing is not so difficult, so I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem for us. Besides TypeScript, we use functional programming a lot. All these conceptions like, actually, let it be a pool, small pool, okay? Who heard about immutability? Who knows what immutability is? Okay, cool. And who knows about monads? Cool. And last but most important here, who already knows about algebraic data types? Okay. Because this talk is about algebraic data types. I trained a lot, algebraic data types. The reason why they called algebraic is pretty theoretical, but today we will go not from theoretical perspective, but rather from practice. We're going to explore 3 different data types, 3 different examples of algebraic data types: option, either, and remote data, and we'll see how they're useful for you as a developer. Let's start from the first case, and it is how to save $2 billion. Intrigued? Well, you should be. Who have heard about the $1 billion mistake in programming? Anyone? No? It is the problem about null pointer. The null pointer is a valid value for variable of almost every referential type in almost every modern programming language. And this is a very big headache for everyone. It was called $1 billion mistake by its author, Sir Anthony Hoare. On some conference in 2009, he was giving a talk, and he said, I call it my $1 billion mistake. It was the invention of the null reference in 1965. But I couldn't resist the temptation to put in a null reference simply because it was so easy to implement. Well, fair enough. And this had led to innumerable errors, vulnerabilities, and system crashes, which have probably caused $1 billion of pain and so on. Well, that's definitely the pain, and we know that. And there is even a comic about that. Are you really sure that this variable can never ever be null? Of course, yes, I've done this a million times. Of course, I'm sure. Well, in JavaScript, this problem getting even worse because of 2 reasons. First of all, we don't have static typing in JavaScript at all. And we can put literally anything, anywhere, and engine will be okay with that. And also, besides of null, in JavaScript, we also have undefined. So we have not $1 billion problem, but $2 billion problem. And once refused to use null and undefined in our applications, we'll save those billions for ourselves and just be happy. JavaScript API itself likes to use undefined. Let's, for example, take a look at the array.find method. It's TypeScript, I warned you about that. It's type notation. It says we have a type array of something of type T, the T in angular brackets. It's called generics. It's type of something that will be inside our array. So this type array has a method called find, which is a function. And as its only argument, it also takes a function, predicate function, which accepts one argument of type T, of our elements, and gives us a boolean, and the whole find function gives us our found element of type T, or undefined. This vertical line in TypeScript means or. So, how do we use it? Let's say we have an array of users, objects with ID and name, and we are trying to retrieve a user from this array using our find method. And we're giving it a callback, and if we will not find anything in our array, logged in user will be undefined. And in this case, when we try to access user properties, we will have an error, runtime exception, red alerts in console. But if we change this situation for a little bit, and instead of array, we now have a map with IDs as keys and names as values, we will not even get an error. It will be just hello undefined in interface. And I think it's not what we want. So I think it's time to say bye-bye undefined, solve this problem, and reduce amount of errors in your software. Because of all that null undefined stuff, our code looks not much beautiful. Let's take a look at the example. We have type of our user from previous slides, and then we have two functions. First one is just our users.find call wrapped into function, and it gives us user or undefined. And the second one is calculating some derived value from our user. It's not important what inside this function. The important thing here is that return type of the first function is user or undefined. And second function accepts only user, not undefined, right? And when we use it on the right side of the screen, we are getting user from using our function, and then we have these ugly constructs. If we want to calculate some derived value, we should create a variable, assign it to undefined, and then if user exists, we can calculate this value, and so our derived value now also undefined or something else. In this case, it will be string. And we always should check this manually. It's easy to forget to check for this undefined thing. And also, you should do it on every level. You should keep checking every time all the derived variables. And you could not find this problem not during development, not even in QA phase, if it's rare cases. So let's try to avoid these ugly checks with help of functional programming. In functional programming, we have a lot of cool conceptions, which may seem difficult from the first sight, but once you wrap your mind around them, it will make your life as a developer much, much easier. And one of these ideas is option data type. It's also called maybe or optional in different programming languages. And actually, it's built in a lot of languages, but not in JavaScript. So what is option? It's a data type which allows us to say that data may be absent. It's a container data type. A in angular brackets, again, means a type of something that is inside our option. And in a sense, this option is just an object with value field or without it. One or another. This, again, this vertical line, it's or, okay? None and some is also data types, and they are just objects. Objects of type some has value field, has field value, and object of type none does not. And actually, this is called algebraic data types. And most of meaningful algebraic data types are containers. And most of them are like one thing or another. And theoretically, it is much broader concept, and it's basically every type which is built by composing other types. And the reason they called algebraic is somewhere there. But today, we are talking about practice. So, there is a library called FP-TS, Functional Programming for Typescript. It's written by awesome Giulio Canti, who has done a lot of amazing things for TypeScript community. Thank you, Giulio. This library, besides other things, contains a lot of different algebraic data types, and one of them is our option type. So, let's learn how we use it. First of all, we should create instance of our option data type. There are several ways of doing that. So, in this first way, we have something of type number or undefined, and we want to make option instance from it. So we have from nullable function helper, and it gives you option, and you don't know in compile time which option it will be, if it will be none or some. But in runtime, if you give it undefined or null, it will give you none. And if you give it something meaningful, you will get back your value wrapped into some instance. And also, we can explicitly create none and some instances. Some is a function here, because we should put some value inside. And this is called type constructors. Okay, let's go back to our example. We had function like this, which gives us user or undefined. And now, with from nullable, this function turns into something like this. So we just wrapped our user.find result into from nullable, and that's it. But now we want to get some derived value, and the whole idea was to avoid these ugly checks, right? And option has method called map on the instance. It accepts callback, how to calculate derived value derived from your optional value. It almost like array.map, but if array map calls its callback for every element in the array, option will call the callback if it has some value inside, because if it does not, there is nothing to call the callback with. So I think it's much easier to read. It's impossible to forget to check for undefined, because there is no undefined anymore. And moreover, do you remember our hello undefined, this previous example? Yeah? We know that when we access arrays by index, this is very unsafe, and it may give you undefined. So it's a good place to wrap this call into from nullable. And if we do that, in the same case, we will get hello object instead of hello undefined. But the difference here is that we will have this hello object all times. Not only we have nothing. So it's much easier to notice that something is wrong. Actually, in FP-TS, it's a bit different. because they have toString method overloaded on their instances, but the idea is the same. So now we want to unwrap our data from option. How? We have a couple of ways. First, you can get back to your nulls and undefines, and what it does, basically it gives you null if option is none, and it gives you your value if option has value inside. Right? But this is a bad API, because we don't want get back to our nulls and undefines. We don't want them to appear in user interface. So instead, we should have some default behavior if we have nothing. And we have a method called default. It accepts two arguments. First one, what to give us back in case of none. And the second one is a callback function, like in map. What to do if we have some value inside. And the result of this callback will be given for us from the whole default call. And basically, it's a very common case when you don't want to calculate some derived value. You have just this identity function here. So it's also another method on option instance called getOrElse, which accepts just default value, and it will give you value from inside the option or the default value in case there is no value inside option. And this is a good API. So the whole process with option is you wrap your nullable data into option somewhere in like API layer, and then through your application you like map, and before showing value in the UI, you fold in it to value from the inside or some default behavior. So what I want you to remember here is option helps us with explicit error handling, and also it allows us to say explicitly, again, that absence of data is a valid case for our situation. Okay, are you still with me? But let's take a look at the following example. Again, we have our user type, but now we want to retrieve our user from backend. And we should not trust APIs. We should not trust backend because it may send you anything. So we should check everything. So we have another type, API user, with all the fields made nullable. This question marks means field can be absent. So it's basically the alias for string or undefined. So we want to parse our user somehow. We want to get our domain model of user. But what should we do if we don't have ID, for instance? So we should not have user as our return type, but rather what? Any ideas maybe? An option of user, right? Exactly. We just learned about option. But we can implement this function something like this. If we don't have ID, we can return none. And if we don't have name, we also can return none. And if we have everything and everything is fine, we just return in our user object wraps into some type constructor. But what if we want to distinguish these two cases? We want to know the reason of the problem. Why don't we have a user? In other words, we want our option to have value from inside the left part, from inside the none, right? And there is another algebraic data type for that. It's called either. It's almost the same as option, but it has two type arguments for the left part and for the right part. And now our former none part also has value inside it. So our example from this will become something like this. What changed? The return type of the function is now either error or user, and type constructors. If we previously had none, we now have left, and we put some error inside of this left, right? So yes, left and right is a type constructors for our either data type. So let's take a look how we use it in our request usual process on front end. When we fetching our user, we just converting it to just plain JavaScript object, and then we call our parse user function, and this parse user gives us instance of either type. And also, in the same way, we can catch API errors and all kind of errors that can happen during the request. Here, we can have catch in our promise and just return left instance in case of any errors. So, and the whole process, like mapping and folding, is the same, almost the same like with option, but now fold accepts function as a first argument because we now have value inside the left part. So this was small example about either data type, and what I want you to remember here is either is actually even better way to do error handling in your applications, because now we can set the reason of the error, and actually with either you don't need to throw exceptions anymore like at all. And you can organize your work with exceptions in more explicit and less error-prone way. I know it sounds suspicious, but if you don't agree with me, come after the talk and let's discuss it, okay? I'm almost sure I can convince you. Okay, let's go to the last case, and it's data fetching. How do we usually load data in modern front-end applications? It doesn't matter if it's state management library or some component, layout component state. We usually have a bunch of flags for loading data. First of all, we need a value property to store our data, but value may not exist yet. So now we have our option type for that. Also, we need a flag to know whether we are loading our data, whether we are in loading state, and then one more flag to know if there were any errors during our request, and if there were, what kind of errors. And it's a lot of problems with this approach. It leads to inconsistencies. You can easily forget to handle some cases. And this whole bunch of flags looks almost like our either data type, right? But we need two more states of this data type, two more types, to know whether we are in loading state or not. And we also have algebraic data type for that, and it's called remote data. And it has 4 states instead of 2. We haven't started loading, we started loading, we unsuccessfully loaded data with some error inside, and we successfully loaded data. And again, let's take a look at the example. Just quick overview of how we use it in pair with React in front end. So I split it listing in 3 logical pieces. First, we have declaration of our component. We import our remote data type and its constructors from our package because FPTS itself does not have this type, so we just wrote it by ourselves. We have it for community. Then we have our component state with just 1 field instead of 4 now. And how do we load data? almost the same as we used to, but now when we starting loaded data, when we mounting our component to our DOM, we set our data value, the data property to be pending, and then when we fetching something, after we have some meaningful result, we put this result into the same in the same property, but wrapped into success because we need it to be our remote data. And in case of any errors, again, we put these errors in the same field, but wrapped into failure. And when we render that, we just have our fault method again. Remember? And now we actually have 4 arguments instead of 2, because we have 4 states, and we should handle every state. And last 2 are for error and data, and for failure and success. And when we again, we have some values inside of it, so it's a functions. And that's actually it. And remote data helps us to express in types that our data will be loaded from somewhere. Now, inconsistent state is impossible. And you can't forget to handle any of possible cases. Right? And also, it has the same way of usage as option and either and a whole lot more of algebraic data types. And it's actually the place when we came to monads, but it's a long story, and we will not go there today. So, today we learned about 3 different algebraic data types: option, either, and remote data, and how to make your life easier, and even how to save $2 billion. Some useful links here. It's FPTS library on GitHub, and then it's an article from FPTS author about algebraic data types, and then it's linked to our remote data type. And that's it from me for today. Thank you very much. In case of any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But don't forget about the mic. Yeah, Dmitry, please help me.
Hi there. Is it working?
Yep.
Okay. To be fairly honest, it's the first time in a long time I actually felt like, okay, now I can move back to JavaScript again.
It's not JavaScript, it's
No,
TypeScript.
I
All of this possible only because of static type system.
Yeah, for sure. I've worked in the past a bit with F# and many concepts are really familiar. My question is really theoretical and kind of funny.
Cool.
On C# we have the link language integrated query, and it's they named lots of things more SQL-y, like what's a map, everywhere else there is a select, what's a fold, there's an aggregate, and I see map and fold being used here. What's your take on the way they're using? Because actually when I read it, it's misleading to me.
Which approach is misleading for you?
The usage of the name map and fold for those concepts. You know, whenever I read a fold, that's not a fold in terms of functional programming.
It actually is. It is a fault in terms of functional programming, but it's like one of the cases for fault. And you're right, the question is really theoretical, and it came from functional languages, and the guys there love to name things really theoretically, like we are cool guys, we are we came from category theory and all this stuff like that. So we just along with these names. So, and I think, again, when you get used with it, it's really convenient, and you don't think about, this fault is not even fault. Any more questions? No. Okay, then thanks again. Thank you very much for coming. And that's it, I suppose. Any closing words, Dmitry?
That's it, besides the pizza. And
Yeah,
the pizza
for
is
sure.
came.
Yes.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, everyone. Now we are ready to party. The pizza's on the kitchen. And Anton is over here for all the questions.